Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. So first of all, this is the a public forum for the renovation to the middle high school. Obviously, that's why you're here. I'd like to quickly introduce the committee. So I'm the chairman, Richard Nichols. Diane Germain is not here. She had gone away on vacation. Robin Briggs is the representative for the school committee. Shana Canistrari is also from the school committee. Jim McCaffrey is out of town, so he's not here. John McDonough, Al Valtor are also part of the school building committee. We have also in the room Ellen Rosenfeld and Craig Schultz, and they're here from the select board. And then we have our architect, Chris Blesson from Tapé. And then Mike is here from Vertex, who is our owner's rep. So they basically kind of oversee the whole project on our behalf. So I want to start with a brief summary of the school. The school was built around 1960, partially renovated in the 90s. Much of the original equipment and structure are at the end of their expected life cycle. The building is going to need significant updates just to keep the building running. As a matter of fact, when I came in, they actually had a flood in the upstairs staff bathroom just the other day, and then they actually poked their heads up to take a look at the cast iron pipe, and the cast iron pipe had degraded and also had been patched along the way. So we're getting to the end of the useful lifespan of this building. The state has a school building program, the MSBA, which partners with towns to help facilitate upgrading and building schools, and this is funded through taxes. So the state realizes that, you know, towns themselves may not be able to afford to pony up to build a new school or upgrade the school because of the expense. So they actually created this program and is funded through taxes to help the towns out. This project was submitted to the MSBA. There was several required multiple options, including a baseline renovation, several school layouts, and also we had to do a new school option, which was required to present to the MSBA. We went back and forth on some of the new options once we got them from the architect, and when we looked at the initial costs, we actually went back and asked them to circle back and take a look and see if there was a more effective way to do the project so we could maintain more of the structure and do it at a lower cost. We also went as far as going ahead and saying, okay, if we do nothing, what's the cost? Because people are going to ask that thing is, okay, we don't do anything, what's it going to cost us? And we have the numbers to back ourselves up on, we do nothing, this is what it's going to cost us. So we're going to present an overview of the options that we explored and the reasoning behind the final preferred solution. While we understand the cost of any of the projects is of great concern to all residents, we need to weigh the real goal of bringing the school up to modern learning environment and fixing known building issues. By working through the MSBA program, we'll be able to partner with the state, and that'll help offset the costs for the town, bringing a better value to the town of Millis. So tonight we're going to present some working drawings to show the progress that's being made in the final design that we'll be voting on at fall town meeting. The choice that we make this fall at town meeting will dictate how the school functions for the next several decades. So after the meeting, we'll be available for questions, and that's that. So I'll go through the project summary, which is up behind me. So the MSBA reviews facility needs annually. We did a facility assessment in 2014 and 2020 for the school. We have the repair and replacement costs outlined in the capital plan, so the town is aware of the costs, and they are working towards figuring out how the town can fit that in the budget. May 2021, we submitted a statement of interest to the MSBA, and then we became accepted into the program. We approved a $1.3 million feasibility study, which we're in the midst of right now, and then today we're working on feasibility activities as we speak right now. So, and if I can figure out, oh, I think that was it, actually. So I'm beyond my slide.
Yeah, actually, sorry, that was going to be Bob, but Bob, do you want to add anything?
That's good, yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks so much.
Thanks, Rich. Now I don't have to talk as much. I'm Bob Mullane, I'm the superintendent. Thank you for coming tonight. Just to highlight some of the things Rich mentioned, you know, he kind of stole my thunder with telling you about the flood, because that was the first text I got this morning. Was, it'll take me a second to find it, but the first text I got had a nice, you can't see it for you, but there's a nice picture on it of a hallway with water all through it. Faculty men's room upstairs flooded out and came through the ceiling down to the first floor. And this is from the custodian. I'm going to get a wet vac now and start working. Fortunately for us, it was the classroom that came down to was a small classroom, a small resource room type of classroom, so we didn't have to move a lot of kids, but we had to make some shifts. You know, I don't want to say this happens every day, but when I get a text like this, I'm not surprised. You know, the building is showing its age, usually, mostly like behind the walls and above the ceilings. John Engler's here tonight, our Director of Operations, and he and his staff do a great job about making the school look nice. And it looks nice when you walk down the hallways, and we have windows and there's light. You know, I think back to the old Clyde Brown, and you walked in that school, any of you that had the misfortune of walking into that school, you know, you were immediately noticed like there's no light in this building, and this building's different. It looks nice, the windows are nice. Unfortunately, those windows are good for bringing light in, but they're also not so good at keeping rain out. And so when it rains, our windows leak. We have, you know, so we have a series of problems. So, you know, that's part of the reason why 4 years ago, we submitted a statement of interest to the MSBA. And the MSBA, that following year, the following spring, in March of 2022, the MSBA invited us to join in their program. When we applied, there were 53 districts that applied. 17 were selected. And the MSBA Board of Directors described those projects as the most needy and urgent. So, you know, and that was 3 years ago. So this process takes time, and it takes time because it's a huge commitment on behalf of the town. And so the MSBA is a very structured program, as anyone that's been to some of these meetings before knows. So, you know, that's how we got where we are today. A lot of this building is outlived the life of its infrastructure. And then on top of that, the other thing that made it a needy and urgent project in the eyes of the MSBA, in the eyes of anyone who works in here, is the crowding issues. The classrooms are undersized for you know, what the MSBA standards are. So you know, our spaces aren't the right size for 21st century education. The school looks exactly the same. If we have any alumni here, no matter what year you graduated, if you were in this school looks pretty much the same. And we don't educate the way we did back when this school was built. So this is a great opportunity to right-size our classrooms and get the proper infrastructure and get the types of tools and resources our kids need as, you know, we're entering the second quarter of the 21st century. So that's how we got here. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Mike Quinlan. I'm a senior project manager from Vertex. We are the owner's project manager. We're happy to be back in Millis. My colleagues completed the Clyde Brown project a few years ago, as well as the fire station and some other work around town. So we feel like we're home with family here, so we're glad to be helping you again. I'm going to talk a little bit right now about the process, sort of how we got where we are, and a little bit about ultimately go into a schedule a little bit. And then I'm going to turn it over to the architect, Chris Blesson from TAPE. He's going to walk you through the options that were explored and the current preferred option. And then I'll follow up again at the end with the most probably important discussion people want to hear about is cost. And then we'll open it up for questions. So the MSBA process, as Bob alluded to, is a very iterative process. It's often about 5 years from being invited into the program until completion of a project, if it is approved by the municipality. The first stage is the feasibility and schematic design phase, and this gets you to a point where you have a proposed project and you can then go to your community and ask for funding approval. And once that funding approval occurs, there is completion of the design process, bidding and construction that follow. So in that feasibility schematic design phase, you can see that we've completed the first two portions. One is called the preliminary design program, and this is really evaluating the existing school and sort of identifying the problem. It's really getting a full picture of what the problems are with the existing school. It's also the part where we work with the district to really identify unique things about Millis's educational program, how you educate your students, because that acts as a guide for a solution. And then there's also preliminary alternatives that are looked at. We start with a large amount and then they get funneled down throughout the process. That starts to occur during the second phase, which is called Preferred Schematic Report, or PSR. And during this phase, we take those problems that were identified in the PDP and we begin to turn them into solutions. And we evaluate solutions, toss them as we need, and add others. And this phase, I'll get into a little bit more detail in the schedule actually before I go into that. And then the current stage we're in right now is called schematic design. This is where we take the preferred solution and we advance it to about a 30% complete level. It's enough to identify all the spaces that are in the building, how they are adjacent to each other, how the building operates, how students, staff, faculty flow through the building, and get into the more detailed analysis around everything from traffic to accessibility, geotechnical, which for those that don't know is more about what the earth is like around for possible additions or new buildings, code analysis, etc. So this is more detailed design, but still not the completion of the design, but just to get to a point where we know how much the project will cost within a certain range and can then present it to the community for approval. This might be a little hard to read, but it's tough to fit on a single slide, but this is the project timeline. And the reason it got extended out is because the school building committee has been very diligent about making sure we're being very thoughtful about value and making sure that the design and the options that are being selected are the best for the town of Millis, sensitive to cost and taxpayer impact, and trying to balance the needs of the school and the issues that arise, correcting those with minimizing the tax impact. So you can see the preferred schematic report, which is typically shorter, was extended out here specifically to make sure we explored as many options as possible before selecting one that the community would hopefully support. We sit right about here in May of 2025. Just this week, the MSBA voted to approve Millis to move into schematic design, so it is official. They've approved our previous two submissions and gave us the go-ahead to continue. During schematic design, we're going to be doing more of these forums for the community, and other events. We'll be distributing information. For those that haven't already seen it, at the end, I'll give you the website, which has continually updated information, and also some FAQs, and then we can also answer other questions tonight. But between now and your fall town meeting, the design is being advanced and ultimately getting to a point later on this summer where we will do another round of cost estimating so that we can further refine the numbers and get them ready to present to town meeting. In October, it will go before the MSBA board again and for their approval. And then subsequent to that, in November, there will be a town meeting where funding approval will be asked to be voted on. Given that it would need to be a debt exclusion, the process for that is the town votes at town meeting, which requires a 2/3 majority to support the project, and then that's followed up by a subsequent ballot vote in which only has to be a simple majority. So it is a two-step process to get this project approved, and we want to make sure the community has as much information as possible before those votes. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Blesson from Taipei, and he will walk through the design.
Thank you. All right, so the diagrams you see on the screen right now are the three options that we landed with during the PSR phase, the preferred schematic report. The MSBA requires us to carry a renovation only, an addition renovation, and a new option into the final report. And then from there, the building committee needs to select their preferred option, which is why we end up calling it preferred schematic report. Through that process that Rich mentioned a minute ago, the building committee actually took a pause at the end of PSR last spring and did a whole roundabout on maintenance and just the minimal touch options and, did do nothing options, and did a full exploration of that, which you can see the results of on the project website. And ultimately came around to AR4A as the option that is the preferred schematic. And the nomenclature there is really just because we had a whole bunch of options and we had to label them. The AR stands for ad reno, and that's why we got to this option. Oops. So just to orient you to the site, you can see here that the Clyde Brown is here on the site. That's the new school. It was opened a few years ago. And then the middle high school is here on the site. And so the middle high school is where you're at now, and that's the project that we're talking about. And so in essence, what the AR4A proposes is that the far wing on the end of the academic section of the building would get demolished. That's the last section to be added to the building. And then the existing to remain portion is everything here you see now, including the core of the building here, which then we can add the middle school to in the green section there. And then those two are both wrapped around a core program space that is shared to both the high school and the middle school. And so building on that a little bit this is the floor plan, and you can start to see the middle schools show up down here and the high school right here. Right now, these two schools are sort of intertwined a bit. One mostly on one floor, one mostly on the second floor, but the students really mix a lot. And in the world of a middle high school, you kind of want them to be sort of separate schools in the same building that share those core spaces. And so rather than have everybody in this wing and sort of all coming to a bottleneck, this option is producing the ability to have a middle school distinctly separate from a high school. And then all the core components are in here. One of the other big moves and adjustments in this program is addressing the gym. So there's a few things deficient about the gym, and so one of them being the size of it and capacity of it. And so this is proposing building a new gym facility that can host later round tournaments of a size for MIAA sports, and also bring the new life into the gym that it needs. And then what that does is open us up in the existing gym to put new space into that. And the proposed space right now is adding a alternate PE space that helps bring the physical education components of the building up to the standards they need to be at, and then moving the media center over to a core location between the middle school and the high school with a bigger height space, which is what a lot of media centers in schools now kind of have, a bigger volume and a larger space for the media that goes on in schools. The auditorium and cafeteria really don't have much proposed to them. We will go through, upgrade the systems, upgrade the finishes and lighting and things like that to make them more efficient and fresh, but no major reconfiguration. You're sitting in a space that will largely feel like this space when it's done. And then the arts and, so the performing arts and the digital, or the performing arts and studio arts would be on this corridor, again, connecting the middle school to the high school, and those are shared programs. Looking a little bit closer at that, here is the first floor. We have progressed these drawings a little bit since these were made. One thing we're studying right now is an academic model for the high school that would make it a little bit more departmental based, and so that basically means science classrooms would end up together. What you see on this tonight is science classrooms not together, but don't worry too much about that. Just understand that this top wing up here on both floors is the high school, and you can see the breakout of classrooms. And then some interesting components that we're able to introduce to that are special ed support components and teacher planning, things you don't have now. Students in hallways doing breakout groups and resource learning, and the support for teacher collaboration are all sort of hallmarks of the 21st century environment. And we also want to get the SPED classrooms and SPED program, special education, if I'm using acronyms not known to people, but you want those to be dispersed throughout the entire school and not just at one part of the building where it isolates that community. It's a integrated model of learning, and it sort of brings everybody together in the same sort of locus neighborhood. Cafeterias here, auditoriums here. This is the media center I was talking about a second ago. This whole space right here is the existing gym, but that would become media and alternate PE. Again, performing arts stays the same, locker rooms stay the same, a new gym here with access to the parking lots and the fields. And then the middle school here, which is 2 stories as well. One thing to note is that these 2 schools don't connect on the second floor, so there's a distinct elevator for the middle school and distinct elevator for the high school. And they don't go across at the second floor just because there's not a great way to connect that, scope-wise. But this is the first floor of the middle school. Second floor here, again, high school in the existing building to be renovated. And then the gym, PE, and media center are all basically 2-story spaces, but like double height, but 1 story. And then the auditorium and cafeteria. This is the the middle school here, where it was roughly a week ago. And what's interesting about this is it allows the district to edge better into a middle school team teaching environment, which is kind of lost in the current floor plan. So this allows the team teaching model for middle schools to be sort of accentuated and built upon, which is another kind of key component of 21st century learning at the middle school level. Here's a site plan. This is actually being revised currently as well. So Mike was talking a minute ago. When we launch into schematic design, we start putting a whole lot of detail and layer to it, and we start having program meetings again. We've met with the teachers and the staff of the building, the facilities directors, and there's some tweaks we need to make to this that are currently ongoing. But generally, the idea is that we are able to create middle school and high school, and so right now we're trying to sort out exactly where buses will drop off, exactly where cars will drop off, but the thing that probably will remain, and similar to this drawing, is that the area of the building that is being demolished right here, we're able to grab back some space for either parking or drop-off or things like that if we can resolve some of the nuanced complexities around how this site traffic pattern interacts with the Clyde Brown's traffic patterns and all the other complexities that happen on site. So we're studying that right now, and I think we're going to come to a better place than exists now, and better than what's shown in this drawing currently. Just looking at it a little bit differently here, these drawings are axon drawings, axonometric drawings, tool used architects to sort of show you the third dimension. So you were looking at 2D plans a minute ago. The white part is the existing building that is going to be renovated, and then the red part is the addition. And you can see there that we're talking about a 2-story addition for the classrooms of the middle school, and a slightly taller than that addition for the gym, and that's only because you need a certain amount of space between the floor and the structure of the gym to allow for volleyball and stuff like that to play, and then the structure for the gym to get the clear span is a bit taller, and so it ends up being a little bit taller than a 2-story building, but suffice it to say, you've got that depicted there, and then a lower 1-story link connector that's mostly back of house, restrooms, stuff like that, that sort of bring the building up to code, that links back to the back area of the kitchen now. This bottom drawing is a drawing that shows the Clyde Brown here, and then it kind of goes down the slope, and then the driveway, and then the high school. Everything on the right is the addition, and everything on the left is sort of existing to remain. And so that's an interesting way to look at the school too, so that you kind of know scale and context around what's on the site already. And so we're not really proposing, we're not proposing a 4-story building. We're not proposing anything that's out of context to what's already on the site. And so we think it does fit with all of the things that are going on already. And then I think this is my last slide, but this is a more rendered out version of the model. You can see it on the flyers if you picked one up on the way in. But again, we can do a lot with some of the, a lot with a little, I would say, with the site work, and just kind of making this touch on the side of the building for an addition opens up a lot of space for us to then repair the rest of the building and breathe new life into a pretty old facility where you're demolishing a small part of it and adding a bit more, and then you end up with a very nice renovated and added to facility for multiple decades to come. And so with that, I will turn it over to Mike to talk to you about costs.
All right, so this is the part where everybody gasps. Unfortunately, we're in an environment in construction post-COVID that has seen significant amounts of inflation. This is not lost on the school building committee nor the leadership of the town in Millis, and has really been the main focus of decision-making for this project, trying to keep costs contained and minimized while still solving the problems and coming up with new solutions for the school to be able to operate properly. So this chart shows 7 of the options. There were far more than this, but this was the last sort of whittled down list before a selection was made for AR4A, which is down towards the bottom here. And what this shows are, the first column is the estimated construction cost. So that's the hard cost that we would pay to a contractor to build the project. Some projects, especially renovation projects, require what we call swing space, and that's often rental of modular facilities, temporary classrooms. So when you're renovating a building, it can still operate. So some of the renovation options and some of the ad reno options had some potential swing space costs. And the new build swing space is more about, the new build option was to build on the fields, so there would be some temporary need to rent other fields for the town. That's why there's some costs in that column there. And then there's something that we call a project cost markup. This is basically if you take all of what we call the hard costs, the construction cost, and there's all what we call the soft costs. So these are fees for professional services. These are things like FF&E, or furniture and equipment. If you imagine taking a building, turning it upside down and shaking it, everything that falls out is loose. It's not attached to the building. All the furniture, et cetera, refrigerators for the kitchen. So all of those soft costs are outside of the construction cost. That markup can vary greatly depending on the type of project. But we try to keep that at a small amount. You can see that the AR4A is at the lower amount of 30%, and there are some the renovation options that are up towards 33%. And then when you combine those two, you get an estimated total project cost, which you can see for the AR4A option is $127.4 million. Then we looked at the MSBA's participation. So some of the rental options don't solve the educational issues, which means the MSBA won't participate. The purpose of the MSBA is to bring schools up to current standards, and if it's not solving the crowding issue and it's not solving bringing them up to current standards, then they're not going to participate. But for the purposes of making sure the SBC was doing their due diligence, we did look at multiple options of renovating solely as the town of Millis, not with the MSBA's participation. So some of those things would not necessarily get any MSBA participation. They have something called an accelerated repair program, which some of those options might be able to tap into to get some reimbursement for things like roof or window replacements, boiler replacements. And then for the projects that did solve the educational problems, is mainly the AR5, AR6, and AR4A, and of course the new build. We put a range here, and the reason there's a range is because the MSBA has a published reimbursement rate for every town. They evaluate every town demographically and their ability to support and fund these projects, and then they assign a percentage. Millis's percentage is about 53%. That doesn't mean they're going to give you 53% of the total project cost. There are caps, and it gets highly complex, and I won't bore you, you'll be asleep in no time. But there's certain parts that are capped, and there's certain things that the MSBA doesn't participate in that are ineligible, including things like athletic fields. So the effective rate tends to be less than the actual reimbursement rate, what's published. People very often get that confused. So we have to put an estimate to it because it changes over time based on some of the decisions that are made during the design process. And we need to pay close attention to getting the maximum amount of reimbursement that we can for the town of Millis. And the AR4A we're estimating is between 35 to 44%. That gives us an estimated reimbursement for AR4A of roughly $45 to $56 million out of the 127, which means the potential cost to the town would be somewhere between $71 and $82 million. I would like to note here, I was actually just doing some research on this earlier. The MSBA has projects all over the Commonwealth, obviously, and we're constantly looking at them and comparing them. And Millis has always been sort of at the lower end of the scale of the cost per square foot, which is often a way to evaluate the cost of these projects and compare them to each other. It's how much are we paying for every square footage of space that's going to be used for educational purposes. I was the middle schools and high schools separately, as well as combined middle high schools. All of the ones that are in the pipeline right now are between $700 and $800 a square foot. And this project right now is about $650 a square foot. So while it may seem like a lot of money, and it is, it's certainly it's not inexpensive at all. It gives you an idea of the diligence that the school building committee has directed the team to really be at the bottom end of the scale and to get the most bang for the buck. And the reason the AR4A was chosen was there were ways to do it less expensive, but they didn't solve the educational problems. There's ways you could build a new building, it solves everything perfectly, but it's the most expensive. The addition renovation option gave us an opportunity to solve the educational issues and operational issues while keeping costs to the minimum. So we like to think of it as the best of both worlds. Obviously, everybody needs to make their own judgment about the tax impact and how that's going to, how the town will react to that. Obviously, Millis has been through a 10-plus year capital program with major capital facilities, including Clyde Brown, the new police station, new library, renovated fire station. So we fully recognize that there's a bit of tiredness from the community about taxes, but the good thing is if this project proceeds, the town is really set up for decades before another major capital project is needed. So that's where we stand. I'm sure you'll have more questions on that as we open up the Q&A shortly, but wanted, before we did that, just to make sure people are aware of ways to get information or ask questions. We have our project website, which is www.millisschoolproject.com, which has a ton of information, presentations, meeting minutes, FAQs, and then if there's something that you're not seeing but you want to ask a question, we have a project email address, which is middlehighproject@millisschools.org. Myself and Rich in the SBC and Bob from the schools take those questions in and respond as quickly as we can. It's not always immediately. It may take a couple of days, so I ask for your patience there, but there is an opportunity to ask specific questions through that email address. As well, the committee meetings, the SBC meetings are available on the town website, www.millisma.gov/schoolbuildingcommittee. So with that, I will open it up for questions. And I'll have a mic if anybody would like it. I know there's got to be some out there. Wow, you love it that much, huh?
Well, you did such a good job.
I guess. Don't be afraid. We've taken easy questions and hard questions.
So the swing space, this it's loud. The swing space cost for the one that you guys chose was $0. Can you guys just explain how does that work?
That's an excellent question. I'll start it, Chris, but if you want to add anything. The reason why there's no swing space needs, and this is one of the reasons why this was a preferred option, is because the addition would be built first. So the addition becomes your swing space. So as you build the addition, it becomes complete, comes online, spaces are used, maybe not always as their original intent, but they temporarily house some of the classrooms. They now have excess. Then we would go back in and do the renovation portion, and then once that's complete, the demolition of that, the older wing. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other?
Hi, I happen to have been on the school committee during the prior renovation in the 90s. And so will things like the boilers and stuff like that, I know the roof needs to be replaced, but I'm pretty sure we replaced the boiler 30 years ago, or almost 30 years ago. Is that going to be replaced, and other systems, so that everything in the new and renovated space will be up to date and up to code and stuff?
Good question. Chris, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So that will be done. That's the short answer, is that the current idea right now is that we're going to do all new systems, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, because you've got pipes that break, and then bring everything up to code. And so the boilers would be new, security systems, fire alarm, energy codes are going to be a critical thing. It's quite different than it was when this building was built, and even in the 90s. And so we'll be looking at that, and every step of the way balancing out how far we have to go. And if you do look back on the effort on the 10-year plan, maintenance plan, and cycles like that, you'll find that we kept bumping into, you start one scope of work and then you end up at a threshold that triggers you to do a whole lot more. And so that's why it kind of compounds into a place where you're kind of going to spend the same amount of money, either, should I hold this closer, either over 10 years or kind of at once and get it all done together. And so the building moves forward together as a package, and it's designed that way. So yeah, all the systems will be done and fresh. I'll carry this. I'll come to you next. Here you go.
Hi, I'm just wondering if there are any anticipated increases in costs due to tariffs?
Great question. I know it's on everybody's mind these days. There's unfortunately no answer at this point because it changes seemingly, daily, weekly. The current thinking from most of the construction managers that we work with on a regular basis is that if tariffs come in at the levels that have been discussed, like steel and aluminum at 25%, et cetera, the current thinking is that it's somewhere between 3 and 5% increase in the construction cost. That is, again, it's difficult to project because we have no idea where it's going to end up, but that is the current thinking. And I can tell you that our current project cost estimates are based off of, our construction cost estimates are based off of start of construction. So it's not today's dollars. It would be they're escalated to the future dollars. So we factor in a certain amount of increase just on inflation on a regular basis, so that we're not telling you that it's this, and then 2 years from now when you put a shovel in the ground, it's 10% higher. We track that with professional cost estimators, and we make an assumption about what costs will be. But it is, and then we also have construction contingencies that are there should the escalation or inflation be higher than we expect. So it's a bit of an art more than a science, but we have a lot of experience over the years, and oftentimes it's more predictable than the current environment. Obviously, things are changing rapidly. But excellent question. It's on everybody's mind these days.
And I just want to bring up one thing. With the Clyde Brown School, due to the diligence of the previous committee, we actually came in significantly under budget. So, I mean, we have a history in the town other than when we find things that we don't expect. We had one project where they found some asbestos in the ground, which, that was kind of a surprise. In general, the town, like Mike said, we take physical responsibility to heart. So we got it. We don't want to spend any more money than we have to.
And that's how we run all our projects as well. We would see it as a failure on our part if we had to come back and ask for more money. There are some things that are outside of our control, but ultimately what we want to do is set a budget that's acceptable to the community, but also has enough for us to be able to navigate you know, the complex environment. But the last thing we want to do is get an approval and then have to come back and ask for more money in the future.
Speaking of the future, do we have a projected timeline for what grade levels this is going to be affecting, just so we can kind of speak to, you know, which grades it's going to affect?
Yeah, let me get that. Let me get the overall.
Hopefully we don't see your vacation photos.
Nah, I don't get a vacation. Sorry, bear with me for 1 second. Just bringing up the overall project schedule. All right, so we talked about getting through town meeting in the fall. Should that be approved, the furtherance of the design up through construction documents would go through March of '27, and then construction would begin in, looks like April of '27, maybe a little bit into May, and then that would run through 2029. It would open, the addition would open in November of 2028, so we could do depending on the timing, it could be occupied for probably the spring after the Christmas break.
Just based on when you said what grades, what would be the biggest disruption? Is it like the middle school first, in terms of where the teachers will teach the students? Will they be housed in trailers, or where is the teaching going to happen?
So there would be no change for the addition while the addition is being constructed. We would work around the operating facility, you know, where the addition is out back, and then eventually, once that becomes occupiable, the middle school would then be moved over there. The high school would then be sort of consolidated, and then we would work out phased renovations. So a lot of times we do a lot of that renovation, what we call summer slammers, when the school is out. But the renovation portions would be phased, so there'd be some shuffling of spaces, but by then, with all the new space, there'd be a lot more available space within the building. But it would be a bit of we don't have it worked out yet, it's still too early, but there would be a bit of phasing where kids would remain in the building, they'd still be in the building, but they might be shuffled from, it might be in one classroom in the fall and a different classroom in the spring as we work our way through the renovation process. So there's probably, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, Chris, of renovation on the phased approach. So there is, you know, some things that the kids will have to live with. I can tell you that they're usually a lot more resilient than the adults are. Kids tend to do pretty well. We build additions to schools with them fully operating all the time. It just takes a lot of good communication. Chris, you mind? Oh, sure. We are recording it and live streaming it, so that's why I try to use the microphone.
Okay, sorry. Can I just clarify, you said if it passes at the vote in November, then construction wouldn't start until April of 2027?
Yes, so the current construction phase would be, May of '27 would start, that's correct. So
Okay.
about 2 years from now.
And then when do the taxes start?
That would be a question for the town. Typically, I can tell you in my experience that the taxes don't hit until the money is borrowed. So it certainly wouldn't need to be borrowed way in advance, but it would be up to the town to decide how and when to borrow. Oftentimes, some communities do what's called a ban or a bond anticipation note to start to borrow on a short-term basis some of the early costs until they're comfortable that interest rates are at a place that are favorable, and then they do the full bond issue for the whole project. So it's, you know, the town it's up to them to decide when to do that, but obviously they're going to be focused on what's best financially for the town and when that will, but they wouldn't be borrowing funds for construction, you know, 2 years ahead of that. So it wouldn't happen right after town meeting, if that's what you're asking.
So if, say, the town says no to AR4, does it default to the renovation option? If it defaults to the renovation option, are the projected numbers like a one-shot deal? And if they are, how long till that Band-Aid falls off and we have to do more renovations?
So it doesn't default to any other option. If the vote fails, the town would then withdraw from the MSBA participation. So your ability to seek funds through the core program would no longer be, you'd have to reapply to get back into the program. So I'm very familiar with this because I live right next door in Medfield where we had a failed vote. I'm still a little scarred by that because I chair the building committee in Medfield. But it's taken us 4 years to get back into the program. So if you want the state's participation assistance, a failed vote will kick the can, I would say, a minimum of 4 years down the road, possibly more, because the MSBA wants to work with communities. There's lots of communities clamoring for those funds, and you know, they're going to be looking for municipalities that really support, you know, the goals of the MSBA and the goals of the projects. So what would Millis do after that? It's certainly up to Millis. As we evaluated these options, we did the 3 renovation options, which would be to basically just bring the building up to current codes. It does not solve the overcrowding problem. It does not solve a lot of the educational issues. But as you can see on this slide, they were evaluated because the cost of that would be, you can see the potential cost for the renovation option without the MSBA's participation is still about $75 million, as opposed to getting you know, $50 million or so from the state, and the town's portion for a project that does solve all those issues is around 70 to 80 million. So the benefit of having the state participate obviously shows you can get so much more bang for your buck. And then lastly, before I'll hand it over to Craig in just a second, the 10-year capital plan that we developed is basically looking at spacing out projects for the next 10 years just to stabilize the building. Roof replacement, window replacement, you know, systems that are deficient, like leaky pipes. All of those things have costs. So it would mean the town would have to do it piecemeal, because if you do it all at once, you trigger even more costs because you then need to bring everything up to current code. So it's a bit more complicated, but that in itself, you know, is nearly the cost of this project with the state's participation.
Thanks. We have talked about what will happen on the select board side and everywhere else on it. It's going to be a 10-year rolling renovation with an override every 2 years to fund between $8 million and $10 million. And I promise you, I will not be on the select board if I'm doing overrides every 2 years. It's just like, shoot me. But that's the solution. We either let the roof leak and flood the classrooms, or we spend however many millions it is to re-roof. We don't have the money and available funds to re-roof without an override, so there's a very small, well, $5 million override, an annoying amount. We vote it. 2 years later, we come back to the voters and we do the windows. 2 years later, we come back and do the HVAC. And we get nothing new out of it with absolutely no state participation, and it's going to cost us more, realistically, over 10 years to do that than to do the project we're talking about and have a building that's new. So that's the solution. And to the other question, we will use a ban. That's what we've done for all of our other projects. It's most likely we will. So it'll probably be near about the time the building opens, unless we find a really favorable rate structure, then we might jump early. But that gives us some time to watch rates move up and down and see what we want to do with it. But with most of our other projects, we did a bond anticipation note and then bond it at the most appropriate time that we could find a good rate.
Thanks, Craig. Any other questions? Those are all great questions, by the way. And again, don't be afraid to shoot us anymore for those not inclined to public speaking. If there are no other questions, we'll let you enjoy this beautiful evening, but I'm happy to stick around if people want to just chat one-on-one, or if not, enjoy the beautiful spring day. Thank you all.